All right, so we're going to take a look at Part B, 2013 1B here, and this is going to have us again writing a method called update downloads. It's important to take the time to look over all of the problem, the samples that they give you to really understand it. So it says that update downloads is going to take a list of song titles as a parameter. For each title in the list, the method updates download list, and it's either going to increment the download count if a download info object exists. Otherwise, it is going to add that object to the list. When a new download object info is added to the end of the list, the order of the already existing list stays the same. So as you're reading these, you want to be thinking about what do I already know that they're going to be asking me about. And because we're talking about an array list here, and we know that we're going to need to add an element to it, I have gone ahead and added a slide here about using the add method on an array list. And that is where you call .add, and then whatever it is that you're going to add follows in the parameter. So you may want to pause the video here and look at that. So they have some samples here. Where they show you if they run the update downloads here, it says it results in the following download list with incremented download counts for the objects with title Soul Sister and Aqualung. And then it also, in this case, it also has a new object with title Lights and a download count of 2, and another download info object with the title of Go Now with a download count of 1. Everything else remained unchanged. So here's where they're again asking you to write 1B. It says complete the update downloads method below, and here they kind of restate what's already been given to you. It says that when you write this, there should be no duplicate titles in the download list. No entries are going to be removed from the download list. All songs and titles are represented in this downloads list. For each existing entry, it's increased the number of times that it appears. And you can take a second and read the rest of those. So let's kind of talk about what's going on here. We know that we are going to need to loop over every element in the array list titles. And we are going to be checking these titles. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up what I have here in Pseudocode just to kind of talk about what this question is asking. So they want us to check over a list, and if a particular download is already in the list, then it should increment the number of times it's been downloaded. If that particular element is not in the list, then it needs to be added to the list. So again, if it's already in the list, increment the number of times it's been downloaded. If it's not in the list, then it should be added to the list. And that's where you're going to use that .add method because we're working with an array list here. So to kind of get you started here with some pseudocode, we are going to use, I would recommend an enhanced for loop. And I would say loop over all elements in the array list titles. And what's going to come next, and this you're going to find this in a lot of these problems, you're going to need to use the method that you just wrote in 1A in Part B. They build upon themselves, and this problem is no different. You definitely need to use that get download info again, because get download info returned an object if it was actually in the list, and if it wasn't in the list, it returned null. And so the way that I would write this is I would declare a new variable, and you know that it's of type download info, and I'm going to call it found. And remember that if we run that method that we had earlier that was called get download info, if what I've just written here is null, that means that it was not in the array list, in which case you need to add it. Otherwise, if found did return an object, then you need to go ahead and increment the number of times that element has been downloaded. So in that case, you would be running the method that they gave you called increment times downloaded. So this hopefully should be enough to kind of get you started here. I would use an enhanced for loop to loop over all of the elements in the array list titles. I would create this found variable of type download info and use that method from 1A. If it returns null, then you need to use that .add method on the array list called titles. And you need to call the .add method on the download list, not on titles, on download list. Otherwise, you need to increment the times downloaded, and you need to increment that. You need to call that on this found object here. So this hopefully should be enough to kind of get you started with pseudocode. Again, go back to my previous video if you need a refresher on enhanced for loops. And again, we're going to see a conditional statement here. If you use that method from 1A, get download info, and it returns null, that means the object's not in the list. You need to add it. Otherwise, it is in the list. You need to go ahead and increment times downloaded. That way, that is increased in the list.